Welcome back. We are going to discuss another type of sampling technique in this video. The sampling technique we'll discuss is how to create a stratified sample. Sometimes researchers have concerns that their samples may not be quite representative of the population at hand. When that happens, they have a technique that will help them control for traits in the population. One thing a researcher might want to control for in this situation with our NFL players and their opinions on CTE is the amount of contact a player has in the game. Different positions in football have varied levels of contact. I would not want a sample that had too few or too many players that had minimal contact in games. For this purpose, I created a variable called position summary that took the given positions on the rosters and placed them into one of three categories: offense, defense, or special teams. It could be said that players on special teams have a low, let's put an arrow here, level of contact in the game, whereas players that play defense primarily and offense may have higher levels or more contact with players in games. This could affect their opinion on CTE. I took a look at the data and found that roughly 4% of players are on special teams. The remaining 96% was pretty much evenly split between players that play defense and players that play offense. I want my sample to have that same spread of players, that is roughly around 4% of them being on a special team, 48% of them being a defensive player, and 48% of them playing offense. So if that's the case, and we have our sample size of 250, I can then force that 4% of these 250 players are chosen from the special teams. So if I figure out what 4% of 250 is with my calculator, that's roughly 10 players. If I do 48% of 250, or basically I could say if I have 240 players left after knowing 10 of them would be special teams, I would split them evenly between offense and defense. So I would want 120 players here and 120 players here. That is my aim. This will help ensure that my sample is representative of the population when it comes to this idea of a position summary. Now, what I've created in these three groups is something we call strata. These are strata. Now you can see why this has gotten the name stratified. So you create the strata, and then you do a random sample within each of the groups you created. So the randomness comes in and randomly selecting 120 players from offense, randomly selecting 120 players from defense, and randomly selecting 10 players from special teams. We're back at our NFL population data, the rosters of 2022, and I want to show how we might accomplish that. So we will click on Data here, Sample. In this case, I want to sample my special teams. So I'm going to grab the player's name, their team, and just so I know that it's doing it correctly, the position summary. I want 10 players. Again, this is my aim for special teams, and just one sample. Now to force StatCrunch to find special teams, I'm going to click on Build here. I'm going to use this where statement, and to get at it, I have to click on Build. and I can tell it where the position summary, I'll add that, it's building a sentence up here, is equal to, now once I click on position summary, I can look at the values down here and it will show me the categories that are under position summary. So I'll click special teams and add that. So I have a sentence up here that will limit this selection to just special teams players. Hit OK. Scroll down. I want this to open up in a new data table. So I'll have this set and I'll hit compute. New tab just popped up and we have our randomly selected 10 players from special teams. So that would make up part of my sample there. So I have their list. Go back to the main roster, the population. And let me do this for as well. Let me do this for the offensive players. So data, sample. Now we're going to do 120. Let's do offense first, and then 1 sample. So I'll build a similar sentence here. Position summary equals offense. Click OK. I'm going to ask this again for new data table. We'll click compute. Spreading these out, you can see that we now have randomly chosen from our population 250 players, probably not 250, 120 players that their position summary is offense. This can be done one more time for defense. I won't show you that. And then we would take those 3 lists and combine them together to make our 250 size sample that we would then go and attempt to contact these players and interview them.